Um, I want to jump to what you said too, Mark, about healthcare, just society in general, of the struggle of recognizing when there's a mental health issue versus thinking it's a frequent flyer or everything's fine.
Mhm.
I don't know if this is provocative, but I'll ask it because I think it's important to ask. What do you think is at the root of that? Because I would imagine, not to oversimplify, but there's some people that would say mental health crises are just people need to figure their shit out, right? Just figure
Mhm.
your stuff out. It's not a real medical issue. It's not a biological issue, right? And then there's others that would go to the other side of it and say, no, no, it's purely biological. It's the hormones. It's something's misfiring in the brain. And that distinction maybe is important, right? Because I think people that are less sensitive to mental health issues believe it's not real. It's just we all have problems, we all have issues. You're just not doing a good enough job of dealing with it. And so it's on you to figure that out. What do you think it is? Is it truly biological? Is it the way our hormones in our minds and the neurons are firing that lead to mental health issues? Or is it more abstract? Is it more psychological in the emotions and the issues we deal with? Or maybe it's both, but how do you think about it?
Yeah, it's definitely both. And actually, this is my next book is going to be about this
Mm,
exact issue because the pendulum has swung back and forth throughout the history of our understanding of mental health between extreme biological determinism, everything is just that's the way your brain works, that's the way your genetics works, whatever, all the way to the other side that it's a problem of living or that it's just a choice that we could do differently. We know that it's neither extreme because when people say that it's just the way your brain works, well, your brain doesn't make sense
mm,
in a vat, in a jar. Brains in jars don't have the kind of consciousness that we have, that your brain is a constant give and take of information with the world on the other side of your skin.
mm,
That's what your brain exists to do. That's what all of your nerves, your peripheral nervous system does, is take in information from the world outside you,
mm,
which then changes your brain. On the other side, too, though, we know that mental illnesses don't exist extemporaneous to us, just entirely outside of our brain in a sick
mm,
society.
mm,
That yes, it's true, our societies do become sick, but remember, societies are just collections of people. Families, workplaces are collections of individual people with individual brains, and we know that you can see changes based on, for example, poverty. You can see poverty in the brain, to oversimplify it. We can see poverty and trauma in your genes. There's
mm,
a common misunderstanding, I think, of what something being genetic means. You know,
mm,
somebody says, I have depression and it's genetic. That doesn't mean anything because your genes, likewise, are completely contextual based on your epigenetic
mm,
landscape, based on your environment that's around you. So it's a constant three-way, I would argue, give and take between your body, your brain, your mind, and your society and environment around you.
mm. Yeah.
And actually, one more thing I'll say on that is that um, between the brain mind kind of continuum or divide, I don't even want to say it's a divide because they're seamless. Um, Mind seems to come up or emerge as a new property that isn't wholly contained in both. And then I would
Mm,
add in the environment piece there too. So if you're looking for your mental health in any one of those, in the brain or in the mind or in the environment, you're not going to find it in any one of them because it's like three different color lights that come together, or three notes on a piano that
mm.
come together and make a new chord that doesn't exist in any one of those three things exclusively. So I think our mental health is an emergent property of at least those three building blocks.
Mm. So what do we do with that? To your point about doctors, parents, is it that we have to get more sophisticated or evolved in exactly what you're saying of how we think about men? We're thinking of it too simply. We're thinking of it as a very concrete, definitive, tangible thing, and you're saying it's many things put together. And until we appreciate that, it's going to be very difficult to ever actually effectively treat people, diagnose and treat people for their mental health.
I think so, and there's also a risk of saying, and I hear this all the time, especially among PhD students or new clinicians. Well, it's very complicated,
Mm,
and then they just stop right there. Oh, it's just very complicated.
mm,
Well, okay, but that doesn't really help us. It can be complicated, and we can still do something about it. So
mm,
the good thing about that kind of emergent system that I mentioned, of at least those three properties, is that you can work to change one of them And it'll influence the others as well
Mm,
if we understand that the whole system is connected.
connected.
If we're only trying to quote unquote fix your brain as though your brain were broken, your brain is just doing what it's supposed to do.
Mm,
It's not doing anything wrong. Just
mm.
like your emotions, your feelings, there's no bad feelings. Your emotions are doing what they've evolved to do, to make you respond to the environment and keep you safe, keep you alive. So there's no bad properties. There's only response properties, and it's all information. So when we understand that this is all happening in an interconnected system, instead of trying to exclusively focus on one and reject the others, until we get to that point, then I don't think we're really going to make any progress. And we've seen that happen. I mean, the National Institute of Mental Health invested billions and billions of dollars into brain-based solutions to mental illnesses, and made almost no
No
progress
problem.
in terms of actually changing rates of diagnosis, rates of recovery, actually cracking the nut on fixing some of these issues. Great advancements in brain science research, no question, but has it actually improved people's lives? I'm not really sure that that outcome is as tangible yet.
Well, what do you say to the admittedly cynical view of, as you said, right? It's super complex, and some people would look at that logically, maybe not big L logically, but little L logically, and say when things get to a level of complexity, it might as well be random, right? Because it's so complex, you'll never understand it. It may as well be random, and you could follow that thread of logic to say it's just shitty luck of the draw. It's the way, the interconnectedness of it, all of it, your environment, your brain, your mind, all of it to come together. You're always going to have some people that just end up in this really horrible spot. And it sounds super cold, and I'm not saying it's the right approach, but it's just life. We just have to deal with it. That seems obviously insufficient and not an acceptable answer, but is there any validity to that? Is there anything to be taken from that? Or is that just a defeatist, cynical view?
I think that's just a defeatist, cynical view, to be
Yeah.
honest. I mean,